Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, I'm Tristan Riddell.
And I'm Lee Hutchison.
And you're listening to The Senate Floor.
Talk nerdy to me.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 45 of The Senate Floor, and you heard correct. It is not Matt Hansen on the Senate floor today. It is my good friend, Lee Hutchison. Lee, how are you doing?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's good to be filling in for Matt. I know he's feeling a bit under the weather, so I'm sure he'll be in all our thoughts.
Yeah, he's not only is he not feeling well, but his voice is shot, and so we thought we'd give him a little rest this week, because I think that we've been doing this for 2 years, maybe, and maybe a little bit less. I lose track of time, but this might be the first episode of the Senate Floor that does not have Matt Hansen.
I think, well, if we exclude your X-Files episode with your good lady, I think this is his first departure.
That's right. You're right. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, thanks for
She'll be shocked to hear that.
Well, Lee, before we get into our topic today, I'd love to talk to you about Star Wars, because I know you're a little bit jealous of me right now, but I just got home from work. I was racing through the traffic trying to get to my house so that we could podcast together, but I also had an ulterior motive, because I knew that Star Wars The Force Awakens on Blu-ray was being delivered to my house, and I needed to rip it open and take out that DVD. Even though I can't watch it until we're done here, I needed to know it was in my possession.
I'm so jealous. We don't get it here for another 2 weeks, but I suppose that makes up for us getting the film one day early. This is our karma.
That's your penitence for your hubris of receiving it early. But the thing is, the UK gets a lot of American movies early, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've got Civil War coming up middle of the 26th of this month, so we get that a few weeks early, and we tend to get a lot of the big blockbusters quite early, so it seems like a fair compromise if we get to see it before our American cousins.
You know what? I think, that's okay. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. Like, if the UK gets the early film release and the US gets an earlier, the DVD, Blu-ray, digital home media release, I think I'm okay with that. Now, is it not available via digital in the UK?
Not yet. Not as far as I'm aware. I don't know anyone that's been given a digital copy yet, but we get ours on the 18th. So I've got my edition. I ordered the Dark Side version, so I've gone for that option. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see that special feature where it's all about the making of the movie. I find that some of the Disney Blu-rays have been really poor for extras, and it seems that they've really kind of taken on board the feedback and seem to have improved on the extras front, because that's why I like to buy digital media, is for the bonuses, for the incentives. If with some of you take what they've done with the Marvel movies, and it's been pretty poor returns on them for the past few years. So I'm really high hopes that the quality of extras on this is as good as we hope.
Now, yeah, I'm excited for, what is it, like Journey to the Force Awakens? I think that's what the doc is called. Yeah. I think I'm more excited about watching that for the first time than I am watching The Force Awakens again.
Well, the one thing that's got me most excited about is, for my Christmas, I moaned and begged for the BB-8 toy. So I got that for my Christmas, and I found out today there's an update for it, that when I watch Star Wars Force Awakens, my BB-8 toy will interact with the movie, so that when Kylo Ren comes on the screen, my little BB-8 toy will cower in fear from him. When Han Solo and Chewbacca appear on the screen, he'll get excited. When he's himself on the screen, he interacts in a specific way. So I'm going to have to end up watching this movie in a few weeks with my flatmate and this BB-8 toy, so it's going to be like a happy family.
That is absolutely amazing. That is genius. That is such a good idea. I wonder if it just does that by picking up the audio?
It must be.
Yeah, or do you have to hit a button saying I started it, or man?
Yeah, you have an app that controls the toy. So when I click on it to say I'm starting the film, it will act along with the film. So I'm really not too sure what the magical trick is, but I watched a video on YouTube today demonstrating some of its responses. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll be sitting here for a family portrait watching the movie, so I'm very excited to watch it with BB-8.
I expect to see a framed copy on my desk of that family portrait when you actually take it. So please send me a
Absolutely.
copy.
I'll make sure it's drawn and painted up.
Now, that makes me think. Do you play video games at all?
A little bit, but I'm not the biggest gamer in the world. I tend to pick them up like a year later, second hand. I can't fathom paying that much money for games these days.
I'm not a big video game enthusiast at all. Like I have a lot of video games, but I'm kind of like you. I'll usually wait for them, or I'll just buy a few a year. But there's the Mass Effect trilogy. I think this was with Mass Effect 3, where you could download a companion app on your phone, and you would sync it with your account, and so your progress would be tracked in the game, but also on your phone, and characters from the game would text you after you had a conversation with them.
That's brilliant. That's quite ahead of the time, considering Mass Effect came out, maybe 4 years ago, something along those lines. It seems to be, I was reading that they're going to be doing more things like this with the BB-8 toy. So if this is how it's responding to the Force Awakens, I'd love to see what other little ideas they do, because I was starting to think, well, there's not much else I can do with the toy now. I've kind of done all it is. And then just today they announced, oh yeah, it's going to watch the movie with you. So I think things like this are going to become a bit more common with gaming and toys and everything like that to make people spend the premium on the product.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like even though I'm not that big on special features, I like you are. I feel like if you can give me a good commentary, then I'm sold. Some of my favorite special features have been commentaries, whether it's been Fincher or Ridley Scott or just some of my favorite directors. I love getting that behind the scenes look from the director themselves. But I think if we continue to see more enriched bonus material like the BB-8 stuff or like the Journey to the Force Awakens, if we see more comprehensive docs like that, I feel like I might become more of a special features junkie.
Yeah, we were speaking about this the other day when you were saying you were wanting to move away from hard copy to digital. But for me, if they make a special kind of, maybe I'm the kind of geek sucker that falls for all these things, but I like a steelbook, for example, something that's got unique art or a special feature and a bonus. And I think back to what it was like in the early 2000s with DVDs. They threw so much special features at it, and you could get multiple documentaries, audio commentaries, everything was on it. In the past few years, maybe because Blu-rays haven't really kicked off as well as they'd hoped, they've sometimes pulled back a little bit on the bonus features. I mean, DVDs seem to have next to nothing these days. But I'm really hoping that this Force Awakens documentary is as good as the one for episode 1. It was called The Beginning, and it's one of the most brutal and behind the scenes documentaries I've ever seen, that you can see the uncomfortableness that happened in the pre-production, and it's a real insight into the making of the movie, and it's so hard to get that these days. So I'm really looking forward to it. I was a bit disappointed to hear that they were doing they're doing the read through. They've got that as a special feature, and I would have loved to have seen that in its full glory, but it's only like a 4-minute extract. So a bit disappointed about that, because it would have been a good opportunity to just almost have the film out in a separate kind of release. But hey, I'll have to make do with the 4 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't know that, because I heard that they had the table read, but for some reason I was naive and thought that it was going to be the full read through. That would have been really cool.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer, but if the rest of the special features are as good, then it's not really that big a deal. But it would have been a nice idea, but it probably took up too much space, and it's all down to the margins of the dollars of what they can fit on and what they can market it for.
Oh, absolutely. Now, earlier you mentioned Dark Side Edition. I don't think we have that in the States.
Yeah, it's one of these ones. It's another way to probably milk the fans. I know there's the normal Blu-ray edition, there's the Steelbook edition. We have it in the UK. We've got a dark side and a white light side, which is basically a black copy of the movie with the Star Wars in the middle, and then there's a version where it's just a white case and it's got a blue lightsaber, I think, down the spine, and the dark side has a red one. So it's just it's a quite a minimalist art, and it looks really quite cool. So I'm a bit of a steelbook collector, but with this one wasn't impressed with the quality, and I'm just trying to wean myself off it just now. So I've focused on the Dark Side edition.
All right, well, I think we should probably go ahead and move into our topic. And I'm really excited about the topic this week because this was your suggestion. Like, I went to you and I said, I was like, hey, Matt's sick. Can you sub in for him? And I said, I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, maybe we could do a top 5 list. And then it seemed like almost just like 5 minutes later, you're just like, hey, what if we do top 5 on-screen politicians? I immediately was just like, genius, we need to do that.
Yeah, I think it was thinking like, oh, what do we have in common that could create a good thing? And I love House of Cards as much as you. I was the same. I beasted it over the course of a weekend. I'm a House of Cards junkie. I'm the same as you. I know you visited Washington, D.C. for the sites. I've got intentions of doing that next year. So it felt like it was a really good topic for us to dive into.
Yeah, it's. I think this is a lot of fun because I feel like, like it's almost become a part of our culture to see who's going to play the president. Like, when we find out that there's going to be a movie that has political ramifications or a political side note, we try to find out who's going to be the prime minister, who's going to be the president, who is going to represent this fake United States or this fake United Kingdom or this, whatever world they create. I remember people lost their minds when Morgan Freeman came out to do Deep Impact because it was just it was so crazy cool that even if we couldn't have a first black president in the United States in real life, we at least had a first black president in cinema form.
Yeah, I mean, you think of so many characters over the years of all different positions of power who have been on like the screen, from characters from 24 down to Mayor Joe Quimby on The Simpsons. Politicians seem to get all the juiciest storylines, and I usually find sometimes the more corrupt they are, the more exciting the TV program is. So yeah, I think especially in the past few years from things like 24 to House of Cards, and what looked like revolutionary TV with characters seems to be struggling to match up with reality these days. So it's so fascinating to watch all these interesting characters and how they match up with what can be reality eventually, like a black president, and then 10 years later we have a black president in the office. So it can be an interesting way to judge where we are as a culture.
I think so too. I think it's a great idea to look at how our culture reacts to that in the cinema, to see how they would react in real life. Now, obviously, there's kind of a curve there in adjustments because like some people might be able to take a fictional world a whole lot better than the real one. But I feel like it was a great gauge of the American populace. They were so accepting of Morgan Freeman in Deep Impact. I think even though it's been a question for decades, if not longer, I feel like people were more open to the idea. As silly as that sounds, I really do feel like Deep Impact made an impact in the cultural zeitgeist when it came to accepting a non-white president.
Yeah, and especially when we had season 24, only a few years before Obama came into power, to have someone like President Palmer, this black character, and his race was part of the storyline and the issues and what kind of things a black president could face in things like the primaries. I felt that you watch that, and to see it happen only a few years later, it was hard not to draw parallels if you were a fan of the show with what was happening in reality. And as I say, I touch upon that. It's interesting, you can see the comparisons, but then at the same time, when things maybe aren't going so well politically, we can get characters that are the opposite of what people are experiencing in power. If we've got someone in power like George Bush, how do we represent politicians on screen then? Do we have someone similar, or do we have something that's completely different and an idealist to that? It's so many different options are there for creators of TV, and so many times it matches reality, so many times it's an escape from reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you hit a very interesting point, because with The West Wing, Aaron Sorkin is very much on the liberal side of politics. And, George Bush was in office, and then he had this show. And so he put a very liberal president in the White House, while we had a very conservative president in the real White House. And it was just really funny to see, I should say interesting. It was really interesting to see real life play out in a conservative White House and fictional life play out in a liberal White House, and just kind of how Aaron Sorkin and his staff reacted and what they produced.
Oh yeah, like for example, like I suppose we've kind of smoothly come onto it. Like Jed Bartlett is on my list of favorite media politicians.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's go ahead and start our list. So, like in no particular order, like what's the first one you want to talk about?
Jed Bartlett seems the best way to go in. I watched a couple of episodes of The West Wing before tonight. I love The West Wing. It's kind of one of the reasons I got so into American politics. It had a big effect here in the UK when it came out in the early 2000s. It was the first time we ever had a show kind of like that here, where we got to see the makings of how American politics works and all those intricacies and all those different roles. We've never really had anything like that before. It's different now with rolling news that everyone can tell you who probably Obama's secretaries here and vice presidents are. Before, maybe with kind of Clinton, that was well known, and there was the kind of the gossip side. But for people that are really into the intricacy side of politics, how it all works, how you become president, how you seek re-election, how you work with the House, how you work with the opposition, West Wing was a brilliant program to show that. And I loved it because it was almost challenging everything that was kind of going on in America, and in a way what was going on here in Europe, that we had, we viewed it, especially in Europe, like George Bush as this kind of cowboy, this frankly a bit of an idiot, and we kind of obviously joined America hand in hand in going to war, and there was a lot of opposition to that in the UK. And West Wing, I think its popularity here grew in that it was an idealist show, that a lot of the issues they talk about in the show were what was happening in America with such a conservative politician, whether it was views on homosexuals, whether it was, a variety of issues. And it was such a passionate show that you looked at Jed Bartlett like he was almost your grandfather, in a way that you would follow him into the trenches. It was always those monologues where he felt like the smartest guy in the room, which is a very difficult task to do in an Aaron Sorkin show, to be the smartest guy in the room when everyone else is just as smart. And it was such an exciting show, and it's something that I look at, people I know, and our love for American politics, for the theater of it all, for following it in the different cycles, was born out of the West Wing.
It's really funny because I was actually just talking about the West Wing just a couple of hours ago while I was at work, because there's a friend of mine who loves Aaron Sorkin, loves the West Wing, and I only watched the first season. Mm-hmm. And it for some reason, I just never really went back to it. I didn't watch it while it was on air, but it's on Netflix here. And she kept telling me, go watch it. And I told her, I was like, yeah, I haven't finished it. I got other stuff to watch. And she was just floored. She's like, no, you need to watch this version of the White House. That's how she phrased it. You need to watch this version of the White House.
And what's quite good as well is, I'll recommend to you, is there's a podcast that's only just started in the past few weeks. It's called The West Wing Weekly, and it's where some of the actors that were involved in the show are going to be doing their own podcast series on the show, where they're getting people that were involved in the series to come on, whether they were regulars, guest stars behind the scenes, and they're doing episode at a time. So I think the third episode's out tomorrow. So it's quite good if you're like yourself, you've never really watched The West Wing, maybe just starting it up, watching the episode 1 on Netflix, listening to the podcast, episode 2, and so on. It seems a good way to start for people that perhaps missed it when it was on in the early 2000s and are looking to kind of find a bit of idealism in this kind of difficult time.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I might actually take you up on that. All right. Well, I guess we already mentioned House of Cards on this podcast, and I might as well just go ahead and discuss him because everybody knows that he's going to be on my list. You knew he was going to be on my list.
Oh, yeah.
And that is Frank Underwood. I never thought I would love watching such a despicable human being and at the same time root for him and simultaneously root for him to fail. It's weird. There's this weird dichotomy going on with Frank Underwood because he's so powerful, he's so smart, he's so devious, he's so charismatic and dynamic. He is such an interesting character who just happens to be a politician. obviously the best thing about the show, at least in my opinion, is his relationship with Claire, and now she's become a politician, and I love that duo. So I should really say like Frank Underwood / Claire Underwood on my list here, because the two of them together are a powerhouse. And I talked to a lot of people who have said, like, this is pretty much like the anti-West Wing, where I've talked with a lot of people who like West Wing but don't like House of Cards because they don't like how dreary it is, how dark it is, and how manipulative the White House can be, or the people in the White House. And I don't really see it that way. Like I don't look on it and go like, oh, that's sad. You know, like even if politics is even like 1/10 like this, you know, it's pretty sad. But I see it as just, and I've said this on the show before, I said this on Nerd Nuptial, I see it as a hyper reality, and I think Frank is perfect for that hyper reality, and I want to see him succeed. But at the same time, I love the idea of what they're doing with Hammerschmidt and him finding out and him exposing Frank, because Frank should get his comeuppance. And it's just this, I'm torn while watching that. And I think that's why he's definitely one of my favorite politicians, because he makes me feel that way.
Yeah, he was on my list as well. I love Frank Underwood. I love characters, and I almost think of him he reminds me almost of Palpatine in Star Wars. That I wasn't a fan of the prequels, but I loved Palpatine because he had this clear motive and drive, and he was passionate about what he did. I look at Frank Underwood, and this is a man that loves doing what he's doing. He's got his goal in mind, and he is going to enjoy it every step of the way, that he gets some personal satisfaction from every person he crosses, from every person that he uses. And I love that passion, and part of me, I'm the opposite to you. I don't want him to get caught. It's almost like I get that perverse joy that I love seeing him in that position of power, that when Hammerschmidt was talking him down, like, I'm going to expose you, and I was like, oh my God, no. It's like, I want to see him succeed, because I feel like I've been on that journey with him, that I've been so invested in every bit of, deviousness he has been. And I feel that if it was all went down the drain after only a few years in the presidency, it would be like, what a waste. All those lives lost, all those people crossed just for a couple of years in the White House. I want him to just get that. I want that bit more for him. I want my bad guy just to get a bit more meat. And I just love it. And I'm so excited for next year already, for where it ended, how it ended. And I just think he's brilliant. And it's like that West Wing. It's so rare to see a Democrat as the bad guy. I was showing it to a friend one time, and they went, oh, so he's a Republican. I was like, no, he's a Democrat. And they're like, wow, really? Because I think we're so used to, in so many movies and TV shows and even major news just now, is the Republicans are the bad guys. The Republicans are the devils to be, from high above. But in this show, it shows that the Democrats are just as devious as anyone else. And that gives it a nice counterbalance to the West Wing, where the Democrats are the angels from above that are going to make the world a better place. And that's kind of a kick I get from House of Cards.
It's true. It's inundated in our culture that conservatives are the bad guys. And I feel like it started with Nixon. Like,
yes.
Nixon was a Republican, and Nixon lied, and Nixon damaged the presidency. And so from then on out, the Republicans were the ones with the devil horns. And I was raised Republican. I'm not Republican anymore, but I was raised Republican. And I remember having a conversation with my parents about this, where it was actually over an episode of The West Wing, where, or it was, I don't know, it was some political show. It might not have been The West Wing, actually. No, I think I was younger. I remember they showed this Republican guy, and he had screwed up hair. He was wearing a bow tie. He was lanky. He was clearly a dork. And his Democratic counterpart was this chiseled jaw, football star. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. I was like, why do they look so different? And my mom said, that's because the media hates Republicans.
Yeah, and it's always cracks me up that, especially in the UK, that it is looked like that the Republicans are the devils and the Democrats are the angels. And there was so much sneering in the UK towards, say, George Bush. And recently we had a thing in our parliament to ban Donald Trump from even setting foot in the UK. But, people in the UK are acting like they're the biggest Bernie Sanders fans as well. So, the UK really does buy into that image of the good and the bad. And and especially for the fact that, I don't know if you've ever watched it, but the House of Cards obviously came from a UK TV series in the 80s. And in that, our version of Frank Underwood would be our version of a Republican, a conservative. So there's that kind of difference there where they've switched it around for the UK, for the American version. And if anyone's looking for something to kill some time until House of Cards season 5 comes back, I highly recommend watching the UK series. There's a few parallels between the American one, but they're both quite different in how they go about it.
Yeah, his name was Francis Urquhart, right?
That's
in
the one, yeah.
In the UK version, yeah.
Yeah, a much older guy, very conservative with a capital C, but it was a really interesting time. Obviously, it was a time of conservatism here in the UK, but it's a really fascinating watch. I highly recommend it.
All right. Well, how about you tell us who else is on your list?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna pick a Republican now. Probably one of my favorite villains ever, and that's Charles Logan from 24. I absolutely loved this character. He first appears in season 4 of 24. The president's killed in a terrorist attack. So this vice president, who's mumbling, lacks any sort of confidence, is quite frankly very sheepish, becomes the president of the United States. Probably, I think it's like the 4th president by this point of the series. And he was one of my favorites. He is just unhinged. He plays that role of someone that is so weak and no one respects him. Everyone around him is trying to control him. But we learn halfway through season 5 that he's been behind all the events that's taken place during this day. He served nerve toxins to terrorists. He's been involved in killing some of the main regulars in the series. And him and Jack Bauer have this relationship where it's pure loathing and hatred. And he appears a few times over the rest of the season, but he's such a pantomime villain. Gregory Itzin plays him so fantastically well, and you're watching him, and he's one of these bad guys you're almost rooting for. You love to hate him, that when he appears on the screen you're like, oh, it's Charles Logan, boo hiss. But he's so charismatic, and he was one of the first bad guys where it was someone that wasn't just a person involved in the presidency that was kind of lower down. It showed that power went to the top, and the fact that he killed the Democrat, the famous Democrat in the TV series, David Palmer, really added to his mystique. And he was just one of those characters that I really enjoyed, and he had such an exciting arc and plot. And yeah, definitely one of my favorite characters in 24, from probably one of my favorite seasons of TV ever.
Well, since you brought up 24, I'll go ahead and talk about the person on 24 who's on my list, and that is David Palmer, who you just mentioned.
Yeah, I loved Palmer.
I fell in love with Palmer from the first episode of 24. I thought he was so fantastic. He had this booming voice. He was very presidential. And like when I saw him and the way that he acted with his staff and the way that he wrote his speeches and the way that he just basically the way that he worked and how he was such an honest and good man, and like he was struggling on playing the game, and it's just I saw him and I was like, you know what, I could totally see this guy being president. Like, this was the first time where I saw somebody on TV where I was like, you know what, if that fictional character was actually running, I would vote for him. And Dennis Haysbert playing David Palmer is just so fantastic. It's very hand in glove. Like, I can't imagine that character without Dennis Haysbert, and I can't really imagine Dennis Haysbert not playing that character. And he was in 5 seasons. Well, kind of 4 and
4 in 1 episode.
Yeah, exactly. I loved the relationship that Jack had with President Palmer, because it was like you said, the exact opposite of Logan, because it was like his relationship with Logan was just pure loathing and just wanted to kill each other. But with Palmer, it was great respect and loyalty. And when I remember in I think it was season 5 when Jack found the actual shooter of David Palmer.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you just see that realization in his eyes. He's grabbing the guy. He's like, wait, you killed President Palmer? And you could just see the blood drain from his face, and you knew this guy was going to die. And one moment in particular, and the show is filled with these moments where, I think it's in season 2, crazy things were happening. Like, it was released that the bomb was going to go off, and David Palmer is the president, and he's in an underground bunker, and he says, he's like, he's like, we will not let this United States be taken over by fear, racism, or xenophobia. If this is where it's going to start, this is where it's going to stop. and
Yeah.
and then they hit the clock, and I was just like, oh man, chills. I just love this guy.
Yeah, like one of my favorite David Palmer moments is season 1 when David Palmer is pretending that he has been killed in an assassination attempt to help Jack find the Dresden family. And Sherry Palmer, he thinks, has leaked the news. And this is a man that has had the worst day, and he's remained cool and calm throughout. He's been tested. And he just goes into this bathroom, and that voice of his, he's just booming and screaming. And Sherry Palmer is not one person to be intimidated, and you just see the fear in her eyes as he almost comes across as this big grizzly bear, and he is just smashing the mirror, just like putting it all that if Jack Bauer's daughter dies, it's all on her. And their relationship is killed in that moment where, he's calm, he's presidential, but is that side where you don't want to mess with him. He truly almost is a commander-in-chief there. And you could replace Sherry Palmer with Iran or whoever there, and you could just imagine being intimidated if you crossed this guy. He was brilliant, and his death was so shocking, but I loved how it painted an arc over the entire 5th season that Jack Bauer is out for revenge, out to solve who killed his hero, really. And it was such a fascinating character to watch him develop. I felt he was wasted in season 3. I don't think that was a particularly good season for him. But yeah, I've got so much respect for the man, and I wish I could vote for him.
Yeah, me too, especially right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, who else is on your list?
Yep, I'm going to have to go with Laura Roslin from Battlestar Galactica, one of my favorite movie presidents, space presidents in this case. I love the storyline of Laura Roslin, a woman that finds out she's got cancer one minute. She's just an education secretary on a planet. And by the end of the day, she's president of an entire fleet of civilians from all these different planets. And watching her arc over the 5 years Battlestar Galactica was just a total joy to watch. I thought Mary McDonnell stole the show so many times. Her relationship with Adama was something I was so invested in. And to see her over the seasons, dealing with all these crises in space, while at the same time battling cancer, it always kept her so grounded, even in all these fantastical situations. And it was a series I loved, and it was a character I was just so invested in, that she wasn't a female president. She was a president that just happened to be female. It wasn't like, this is how she should play it. It was just that she played it as Laura Roslin, as someone that had just become president, not someone that sought power, wanted power, but someone that inherited it by default. And it was such a powerful arc to watch.
Yeah, I think she's not on my list, but she would easily be an honorable mention, because I feel, for all the reasons that you stated, it's fantastic. I just love the concept of it happening, like all of this disaster happening so fast and so hard that the Secretary of Education becomes the president of the colonies. And it makes me think of the show that's coming out actually with Kiefer Sutherland called Designated Survivor.
Right,
yeah. And it's the same concept. It's like, what if Battlestar Galactica was really, like in the United States, and that situation happened, because in the United States, we actually have that, where during the State of the Union address, when all the congressmen are there, senators are there, vice presidents there, president's there, like Speaker of the House is there, all the top people are there. They choose one person down the chain, put them in a bunker just in case disaster happens, so that they maintain the line of succession. I know that's not the right term for it, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And it reminded me so much of Battlestar Galactica, and I just love that arc. She has such a great arc in Battlestar Galactica, where it's so funny, because like in that first episode when she's sworn in, you see her hands shaking on the book, and like putting her hand in the air trying to be sworn in. She cannot contain herself because she is so nervous. But then, fast forward a couple of seasons, and then you see her, like screaming at dissidents, saying like, "I will destroy you." It's just so great.
Like, what I loved as well was that it's something you don't get to see very often in TV series, but but it didn't matter that it was in space. I love that idea of a president and how it works with the military, that it's so closely intertwined, and that this character using her touch to kind of keep the military in check, and the military trying to almost control the presidency. And it was fascinating to watch that shift at times. And obviously it comes to a head a few times in the series, but like, it was the relationship between her and Adama that I just loved so much. I watched a bit of the final episode today before recording this. I just wanted to just watch some of these characters again, and it's just that moment when she finally loses her battle with cancer, and like that relationship between this military officer and this president, that there was clearly a love and a respect there, but nothing could ever happen with it because of the positions of power they were in. But it was such a tender relationship. It was never cheesy or forced, and so many times it was just them sitting on the grass smoking space weed. And I loved that. Like, I was so invested in that relationship, and that was really the heart of Battlestar Galactica for me. Like, the robots, everything, that's all amazing. Push that to one side. But it was all about these characters, and Ron Moore did such an excellent job in writing those characters. And I think Mary McDonald just steals the show. She's someone I respected so much throughout the series, and I wanted her to beat that cancer, but ultimately it doesn't matter if you're in space or not. Sometimes the bell tolls.
I love how you describe their relationship, because I love the word that you use, tender, because that is exactly how I would describe it. It's a very tender relationship, and I feel the same way as you do. That made the show for me, because whenever there was an Adama and Rosalind scene, I was there. I was like, okay, good. I'm tuning in. I'm paying attention. All right. Well, to go further down the list, I feel like any fictional presidential list or fictional politician list would be we would be remiss if we did not mention President Whitmore from Independence Day, played by Bill Pullman.
Excellent choice. I never would have thought of that one.
I think we all know why I chose this guy, and that's for his final speech at the end. That is sole reason why he's on that list. That is one of the greatest movie speeches of all time, and Bill Pullman played it magnificently.
I mean, it's kind of parodied so much that people make fun of Independence Day for that big speech, and especially maybe kind of here in the UK, there's like that huge cultural difference between how we feel about our countries. In the UK, it's like we talk down the country and we get on with it. In America, there's that pride that you could walk for hours and hours in our cities and you wouldn't see anyone with a flag outside their door. In America, you walk around the cities and you see it. And it's exemplified in that movie when you see that speech. And, it's hard not to get like, wow, yeah, I want to go fight the aliens. It's a fantastic moment. And, I love the movie. I actually tried, it was a summer of frustration for me. I was a huge sci-fi geek as a kid. And I really wanted to see Independence Day so badly. It helped. Brent Spiner being in it, I had to see this movie. And I was too young at the time. If it was a 12, anyone under 12 at that time couldn't see it. It's kind of changed since then. And that whole summer, I wanted to get into the cinema to see Independence Day, but my parents kept telling me, no, you're too young. You're too young. And I was like, oh, no. And I eventually got round to come into that day where I got to rent it from Blockbuster. When you talk about it on Nerd Nuptial, I'm so there with you guys. We got the video. I remember it having like a hologram on the front. And I remember just sitting down and watching that movie for the first time when I was maybe about 10 after school one day, and I was just had my mind blown. It's such a good film, and he's such a great character, a great leader, and yeah, I'm on board with that.
See, there's not much to his presidency other than him dealing with disaster, and it's really funny, but it doesn't really matter to me. I just love his backstory about how he was a fighter pilot in the Persian Gulf War, and they talked about how he was so young in the movie, and about how a lot of people didn't think he could be president because he was so inexperienced. But then again, flash forward to President Obama, who had very little experience going into the White House, and that was one of his major criticisms. But it was just interesting to see those parallels about how experience, like, it's okay to not have experience in everything.
Yeah.
And Independence Day kind of showed that speech is so great and so chilling in a good way. Are you interested at all in the new movie coming out?
I'll be honest, Yes, I am. If you want to hear that speech, it's obviously integrated into the trailer. I've seen it a few times now in the IMAX. So you're sitting in the IMAX and you hear it just kind of echoing around you that it's not a American holiday, it's an Earth holiday, or however it kind of unfolds. So I've had it kind of drilled into my head quite a bit lately. But I'm looking forward to it. Like, I love Jeff Goldblum. I really like a lot of the cast. There's so many actors and actresses in there that I'm really interested in, and I think they've picked really well. Like, Charlotte Gainsbourg is one of my favorite European actresses, so I'm really excited about it. My only issue is that I haven't been blown away by the trailers because they seem very straight-faced. When I think of Independence Day, I think of it as adventure, action, fun. I don't want it to... Independence Day isn't a movie that I really want to go in and have it be quite dark and dreary and gloomy. I want it to be a bit of fun and a bit of adventure. Yeah, obviously a bit of darkness here and there, but I think the original Independence Day really juggled the genres and, vibes and scenes so well that it could be funny one scene and then it was terrifying the next. And I'm really hoping the trailers are a bit of a red herring, and hopefully it's going to be a bit more, fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. Where, like, when it was first announced, I was kind of like, I could take it or leave it. But the more I think about it, the more I'm really interested to see how they develop this world and what would our world look like if this happened to us and we survived. And also with the addition of Brent Spiner coming back, like that's I'm definitely intrigued on how they're going to work that into it. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so who else is on your list?
Yeah, I've got two left. I can't miss out Leslie Knope, one of my favorite TV politician characters. I felt like with West Wing, but more so as I watched this program as an adult, and I was so with her and her whole journey as a person and as a politician, someone that was an idealist who achieved a relative amount of political success in her hometown, and like that, it gave me a lot to aspire to in a way that. I got into Parks and Recreation because I like the UK office, so I ended up watching the American office. So that led into the Parks and Recreation, and when that started, I thought the first season was a bit ropey, and Leslie Knope was this optimistic character, but the characters in the show seemed to almost sneer at that. And then as the show got on, it embraced her positivity and it rubbed off on all the other characters, that people that had been kind of quite cynical, a bit detached from the process, all became invested in her journey, that she would swallow everyone up in her wave of positivity, from people like April to Andy that were really bums with no ideas of any form of success they wanted. And she was so passionate and it brought people along. And I think that's missing from politics sometimes, that it's so easy to prey on fear, to prey on bigotry, to prey on all of these people's fears. Whereas Leslie Knope, she gets people excited, she gets people coming along with the show. And that's what I want to see in politicians, people that inspire. And it's not just about inspiring globally, it's inspiring about around us, making a difference in our workplace, making a difference to a friend by making someone pancakes. Leslie Knope is what we should all aspire to see in politicians, and aspire to possibly be ourselves, which is what you ask of politicians. You don't ask politicians to represent just themselves, but you ask them to represent you as well. And you always felt that Leslie was someone that would bat for every one of the citizens in Pawnee, whether they liked her or not. And so many times people railed against her in the city, but she always got the job done. And I remembered watching the last episode and just shedding a tear, that I was so brought up in all these people's journey. And it shows how you can make a difference as a politician. You don't need to be president or senator to make a difference. You can be someone in a low level of power, that you can be someone in that kind of normal job and make a difference. And that's why Leslie Knope's on there. It helps that she's a funny person as well, but there's so much about that character that inspires and should inspire.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that is a great analysis of Leslie Knope, and that's a great analysis of her character and her influence on the other characters in the show, and about how what some people saw as a weakness, she saw as a strength, and she also found that strength in others. She's a very inspiring character, and I feel like it was a very popular show, but it also had its ups and downs. Like, its critics went up and down, its viewership went up and down. Mm-hmm. And for all of you listening to our voices, if you haven't given it a shot yet, please give it a shot. Watch it. It's on Netflix, and the DVDs are out. And the first season is, I think, only 6 episodes. It's not very good. The first season is not very good, but it's just 6 episodes. So, and once you get to the second season, it is, they find out who they are. They find out who Leslie Knope is. The writers find their voice, and it's just stellar from there on out. And I have a personal connection with the show because when my wife and I were on our honeymoon, we got so sunburnt that it was hard for us to do anything else. Like, it was hard for us to like go outside or go to the beach or go to dinner or anything like that. And so we had to recoup. And so we kind of like, we're like, okay, we'll take an afternoon and a night off, and we'll just try to lay there, and hopefully our skin will heal. And what we did was we turned on Netflix on our laptop, and we're like, oh, well, why don't we give that Parks and Rec show a shot? And we watched the first season, and we watched it really fast, and we're like, well, that's not very good, but we can't think of anything else to do. Like, we laughed a little bit, but maybe it gets better. And then by the time we got to season 2, we were hooked. So we actually got hooked on Parks and Rec on our honeymoon while recuperating from a sunburn.
Amazing. Like, I take great pride in that. One of my favorite episodes of Parks and Recreation is where they come over to the UK, and I take great pride as a Scotsman that Ron Swanson's favorite part of this holiday is coming to my home country. That I remembered watching it for the first time because we didn't get it here in the UK. It only started showing here a few years ago, so I had to access it through different means. And I remember just downloading the episode, and I knew that they were going to be in London, and I was just sitting there watching the episode, and then Ron Swanson appears in Scotland, and I'm like, wait, Ron Swanson's in like a local train station of mine. Like, it was so weird. It's like one of these weird crossovers you don't expect. And I watched it, and I'm not one that kind of takes like great pride in where I come from. I just, it's where I live, and I think it's a lovely country. But when you see someone that's like a stranger, like Ron Swanson, like coming here and praising it, and Leslie sending him off on this adventure where he finds happiness here in my own country, I thought, oh, it's not a bad place after all. If it's good enough for Ron Swanson, it's good enough for me. And it's those little characters along the way, as I say, that inspire her, that are inspired by her, that are brilliant. That I look at Ben Wyatt, and I'm pretty sure you're the same as me. You look at Ben Wyatt, you think, I can see a lot of me in him. And I look at the kind of my friends and loved ones around me, and I can see elements of Leslie Knope's in them. There's a friend of mine that I just look at her and I think, she is Leslie. She goes around, she gives people the little gifts. She actually gave me the Leslie Knope book that she's got behind her on her desk. I've got that very book.
Yeah, that's on my coffee table right now.
Yeah, and I was like, I went to her one day, I was like, you are Leslie Knope living and breathing. And I think that's one of the best compliments you can give someone, is that if you've got a Leslie Knope in your life, you're doing pretty well.
I pretty much married Leslie Knope. She is so much like Leslie. It's crazy. There's so many things that happen in the show that have happened in our lives, and the way that she acts or reacts to certain things is just really, really funny to see so much of the girl in Leslie Knope. And it's and like you said, I absolutely agree with you. I see a lot of myself in Ben Wyatt, and so it was interesting to see that relationship evolve as we also saw our marriage evolve. And Leslie Knope is on my list, and I didn't rank these 5 through 1 or 1 through 5 or anything like that, but if I did, Leslie Knope would be number 1 on this list for me.
Oh, she would be my number 2. I'm going to keep my number 1 for after we find out what your next one is.
All right, well, my next and last one is Dave Kovic from the movie Dave.
Oh, I'm not familiar with this one. No.
You don't know this one? Okay.
No, I'm looking up now.
All right, so what it is, it's a 1993 film starring Kevin Kline, Sigourney Weaver, Frank Langella, Kevin Dunn, Ving Rhames, Ben Kingsley, and it's directed by Ivan Reitman. It's a comedy where the president of the United States has a stroke.
Okay.
His cabinet just doesn't know what to do. They're like, oh crap, he has a stroke. There's no way that we can put the vice president in charge. What's going to happen? And so they find a lookalike. They find a presidential impersonator. They hire him to act as the president until the real president gets better or recovers from his stroke.
Oh, I like the sound of this. I think I saw that actually mentioned the other day. I saw a list where it was like when I was looking at for some character inspiration. And I was like, I saw this Dave thing. I was like, I've never heard of Dave, and it was just something I just kind of dismissed. It sounds like something I'll maybe have to check out.
I think you really should, because I am a sucker for 90s comedies. Like I feel like we had some of the best comedies of all time in the 90s,
Oh
and
yeah.
this is no exception whatsoever. This is a great comedy slash drama where some dramatic things do happen in it, but at the very heart of it is Kevin Kline, and the relationship that he develops with the First Lady and how he interacts is really, really interesting. It's really funny, and Ving Rhames plays his Secret Service agent, and this is the movie that made me fall in love with Ving Rhames. I cannot recommend it enough.
Excellent. I'm going to have to check this out. As I say, if usually your recommendations on Nerd Nuptial and so on have always proven to be right, so I'm going to have to check this one out as well.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, so who is your number one? Who's the first one on your list?
I'm not sure how familiar you'll be with this one, but my number one is without a doubt, and I'm going to pick a fellow Scotsman here, Malcolm Tucker. He's played by Peter Capaldi, who most of our listeners will probably know as Doctor Who, the current Doctor Who. But before that, he played Spin Doctor Malcolm Tucker. How familiar people are with spin doctors. A spin doctor is someone that is a communications director, that if there's something bad going on in the government, some unfortunate news, they find a way to cleverly spin it. So bad job ratings, how he goes out and spins it by saying it's good. And Malcolm Tucker is one of the most colourful. His language use is just so amusing and colourful and bright and aggressive, and it's one of the best comedic performances. It's an incredibly British show, and it's something that you wouldn't get in America. Malcolm Tucker is based on, I'm not too sure how familiar you are with the real life politician, but Alistair Campbell, another Scot, when America and the US were going to war with Iraq, he was the one that was making the case for the government, really, why we should go to Iraq, that there was these weapons, that he was very much involved in spinning that for the government. So this show was born out of, Alistair Campbell's quite a popular character, but not necessarily a popular person, but a popular character. So this show, The Thick of It, came out, which is very much about the British, spin about the almost a Labour government, we can assume, who are wanting to, just going about their job, and he's going around dealing with the lower level ministers, making sure they're on point online, but he does it through his intimidation tactics. You'll get so many compilation videos on YouTube where it's like the best Malcolm Tucker insults, the best Malcolm Tucker use of swear language, but it's so British, and I'm sure you and the girl would love it. When you were talking about on your recent podcast about loving Shaun of the Dead, I was thinking this would make a great double bill with that. They made a movie. Yeah, they made a movie of The Thick of It where it was called In the Loop, where it was all the characters. It's the same actors, but they play different characters. It's not even acknowledged, but it's about the push to go to war with Iraq. Whereas the other show was all about kind of low-level British things, what was going on in the government. This was about the push for Iraq. So they go over to America. So you have Malcolm Tucker, almost a fish out of water with American culture, and he goes up against James Gandolfini as an American general, and it is one of the best. It's one of the movies I can watch over and over. It is a brilliant insight into the difference between American politics and British politics, American personality and British personality, and it's so well acted. I don't know if you watched the program Veep, but Veep was born out of The Thick of It and In the Loop.
I have heard of that. Yeah, I've seen a few episodes of Veep, but I knew that it wasn't a direct spin-off, but it was kind of, like you said, born of In the Thick of It. Yeah.
Yeah, you see a lot of the same actors that were on the American side. They come over and appear in like an American administration. That a lot of the creative team behind The Thick of It, all this British talent came over, and you look at the writers, the directors, a lot of these people are British, and they're doing this American show Veep. And Malcolm Tucker, as I say, it's a short TV series to get through. It's the first season's about 6 episodes, then the second season's like 2 specials, the third season's about 7 episodes, there's 1 movie, and then the 4th season's about 6 or 7 episodes. So you could kind of go through it in maybe the space of a week. I honestly think you would love this program. It's not a family show. It's very British. It would be an HBO show for its use of language, but you could watch, if you've got the time, just watch a compilation, Malcolm Tucker's best bits, and it is one of the funniest British comedy shows you'll ever see, and he's one of the most funniest characters you'll ever see. He's more intimidating than William Wallace with running at you with a spear. There's a great line where he's with James Gandolfini where he goes, "Oh yeah, have you ever?" James Gandolfini asks him, "Have you ever shot someone?" And he goes, "No, I prefer psychological maiming, really getting into someone's head." And it is such a brilliant comedy. It's almost the anti-Parks and Recreation in terms of hope and optimism. It's about that British, kind of dull life we kind of lead here. Like, we deal with dull issues. In the movie, while running alongside this push for war, there's a subplot about someone in a constituency complaining about their wall. That's what British politics mostly is, and we don't have the political theatre of America. That's why so many of these characters I've picked, and probably so many other Brits would pick, would be American characters, because it's so much more exciting than we've got. But this is so grounded in kind of the mundane British life, but they have so much fun with this character, and I really cannot recommend this character and show highly enough.
I like how you put that, where like if West Wing is the anti-House of Cards, then in the thick of it is the anti-Parks and Rec. I like that. I like how you put that.
Oh yeah, like Parks and Rec deals with the mundane issues that go on in Pawnee. This deals with like the boring aspects of British government, whether it's going on the radio or anything like that. But it is just so sneering at itself. So please, if anyone listens to this, please take that away. Check that out. It's one of the best things you'll ever see.
All right. Well, that's it for our list. That's it for our show. But before we go, I would like to mention just a few honorable mentions, because they didn't quite make the list, but I feel like they should be mentioned. And feel free to, if you have any, to chime in. I'd like to say, like we talked about him a little bit at the beginning. Morgan Freeman from Deep Impact. I'd like to mention Harvey Dent from The Dark Knight.
Yeah, Harvey Dent's on mine.
President James Marshall from Air Force One, played by Harrison Ford.
Go on, you want to do the line.
Get off my plane.
Get off my plane.
I love it when you do an American accent. I laugh every single time you do it.
I know, it's terrible. I don't even know what state it is. It was even recently, we were at a farmer's market and there's an American talking in front of us, and I went to my girlfriend. I was like, "No, they're from Chicago." She's like, "How do you know that?" I was like, "I listen to lots of podcasts where people talk from Chicago." So I was like, she's like, "Oh, all right." So when it comes to me doing an accent, it just sounds like this terribly generic American accent. It's dreadful.
Well, it's funny that you say Chicago, because some would say that the girl has the Chicago accent, and I was born and raised in the middle of Illinois, so sometimes I like my drawl will come out, or at least that's what my wife says. So yeah, it's I'd love to hear your Chicago accent sometime.
I'll work on that one day for you, and you'll be surprised. I'll put it in the middle of a podcast, and you'll go, "He's got it." I'm expecting some good artistic feedback from you two.
Oh, I will take note and keep my ears open. And my last mention would be Emperor Palpatine, because why not?
Exactly. He's passionate about what he does. I respect that.
All right, how about you?
I think I would be the same as you. Harvey Dent would be someone that I would have picked. Senator Palpatine. I just love him because he's one of the only people in the prequels that has this clear motivation, and he loves killing people. That's fine by me. He does it with a smile on his face. No one else smiles in that series of movies, but he has got the biggest smile, like a Cheshire cat. So yeah, I've got to pick Palpatine.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Lee. Thank you for taking Matt's place.
Yeah, anytime, and it's quite first time on the Senate floor from usually filibustering, so it's a nice change.
Yeah, this is the first time that you and I have ever podcast together, and it's been a blast. So everyone, thank you so much for listening, and please go to thenerdparty.com. There you can find all of our other shows. You can find Aggressive Negotiations, the Star Wars podcast. You can also find Nerd Nuptial, which was mentioned on this show. That is a show that I do with my wife, aka the girl, and you can find me at the Insane Robin on Twitter. Lee, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Lee_Nostromo on Twitter and Instagram.
Again, thank you for listening, and please remember that if you're a loyal listener of the Nerd Party Network, that we will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
And so say we all.
And so say we all.
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 Welcome to Nerd Party.